reconciliation. He charmed all South Africans, all the people of our continent, and nations of the world, that they claimed him for themselves. And none of us can deny the right to humankind to claim such an outstanding individual. It was this singular act that transformed him into an outstanding gift to the whole of the world. And this, fellow members of the House, places a heavy burden of responsibility on all of us and future generations of South Africans to steadfastly preserve his legacy and his teachings. I thank you.
Honorable Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. On Mandela Day, having spent time early in the morning with children and caretakers at a creche, I posted pictures on Facebook with the caption, "In loving memory of a man who, like all others, was not perfect, but has a special place in my grateful heart." Because critics had expressed concern that Mandela Day amounts to worship of Mandela, I added that for me it is another opportunity to thank God for what he did through an ordinary man like Madiba. In reading Good Morning, Mr. Mandela by Zelda Lagrange, I was reminded of an interview in June 2013 where Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe said, "Nelson Mandela is too much of a saint. He has been too good to white people at the expense of black people." Some agreed, others protested. For me, there is no doubt that he treated white people above and beyond what we collectively deserve. But this must not be to the detriment of black people. I hope, I pray, I work with everything in me to make sure this great generosity will be for the greater good of us all. In conversations with myself, Madiba is quoted as saying, "People feel I see too much good in people. It is a criticism I have to put up with because whether it is so or not, it is something which I think is profitable. You tend to attract integrity and honor if that is how you regard those with whom you work." In another conversation, Madiba said, "Our duty is to work with human beings, not angels. Once you know that this man has got a virtue and this weakness, you work with him and you try to help him overcome that weakness. I don't want to be frightened that a person has made mistakes and he has got human frailties. I can't allow myself to be influenced by that." Now, one of the first things Madiba did on becoming president was to establish the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, which he said is the embodiment of our belief that children need to live in an environment where they can flourish. The ACDP couldn't agree more and would have loved to see this extended to include the environment of unborn children in their mother's womb. On the occasion of former President Mandela's 90th birthday in 2008, I had the privilege of speaking on behalf of the ACDP in the National Assembly debate. I expressed our appreciation and said, who would have guessed the phenomenal importance of the birth of this tiny little boy on the 18th of July 1918 in Mthatha, Transkei. Not only the impact that this baby was to have on South Africa, but on the nations of the world. Only God knew exactly what he had in mind. Leading the way of reconciliation and reconstruction in a society which had been separated by over a century of racial segregation took great vision and great courage. If Nelson Mandela's mother had wanted and had the option of terminating this pregnancy prematurely, as so many mothers do today, it would not only have taken his life, but also his legacy. Abortion on demand deprives Africa and South Africa of who knows what potential. Now, speaking to our ACDP constituency, Madiba never did become the champion of preborn babies, despite the ACDP calling on him to do so, but it does not take away from the champion he was in other ways.
Member.
Thank you.
Your time is up. Honorable SM Jafta.
Madam Speaker, I've tried to give myself more time when beginning using the 3 minutes given before. Nonetheless, Let me begin and finish by saying that when honoring and celebrating Mandela Day, it must not just be a mere celebration, but something that will talk to the conscience and hearts of every leader in this house. We must dedicate the 67 minutes to honestly serving the people of South Africa. When celebrating that day, Honorable Chair, this House needs to address the dissatisfaction which is characterized by many national protests and strikes in South Africa. That is a serious challenge for the present leadership. The citizens of South Africa should be afforded the right to fully enjoy the democracy that Tata Madiba and many others fought for. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, the people of Mudze and Matatiele are citizens of the Republic of South Africa too. They are disciplined, peaceful, and have been patiently watching this government rewarding violent actions in some areas of the country, while ignoring their peaceful and constitutional steps taken to voice out their views concerning their right to freedom of choice. The government must listen to the voices of the South African citizens equally. They remained patient, waiting for the AIC to come to this very house that betrayed them and be their voice. Let Mandela be honored by giving the people what they deserve. I thank you.
Stogoze Babu Jafta, Mage Jijiza.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are gathered here as public representatives of our people to celebrate one of our own, the son of the soil, one whom we have known, a comrade and a patriot. It is indeed befitting that today we take a moment to reflect on his life and works in order to understand what it meant to be a lifetime activist for freedom and justice for all. But more importantly, what it meant to be human and have your dignity restored. This debate takes place when, as a society, we reflect on the journey of 20 years after attaining our freedom. This 20 years marks a departure from the past, which was fraught with all forms of discrimination. This marks a departure of a society that was privileging only a few. And at times when we talk about this journey of 20 years, it seems we forget where we come from. We start to reflect on what has been done to seek to change this past and forget the history that has made it. In 1994, the Reconstruction and Development Program, as a vision statement, policy and program, envisioned a new society where justice and freedom would be experienced by all. It sought to reverse all sorts of discrimination. It envisioned a society that would be non-racial, non-sexist, and ensured that women's rights are human rights. The past 20 years tell a story of how far we have sought to build this nation, of which we are today its proud citizens. It tells of a story of the struggles of Tata Mandela and his generation of cadres who ensured that through their efforts and struggle can bring freedom and justice. It tells a story of reconstructing a new society, which society today we can be proud and say it's united in its diversity. Honorable Chairperson, in reflecting on Madiba's life, we're mindful that while he was born of the Madiba clan, amongst the people of Abatembu, he was shaped by the history of his people. At the age of 12, when he heard the elders telling the story of his ancestors' valor during the wars of resistance, he dreamed also of making his own contribution to the freedom struggle of his people. He didn't dream of chieftaincy and comfort at the time. To further his childhood dream, he joined the African National Congress and spent his entire life as a member working for the liberation of our country and its reconstruction. It is this movement to which he contributed and was part of shaping its future at given times of our history. In the same breath, it was this very movement, the ANC, through its policies and values, that shaped Madiba and many of his comrades before him and after to be the person that we all celebrate today. Chairperson, honorable members, Mandela Day, beyond the 67 minutes of activism, should serve as a point of reflection on those things that he held dear and wish we could emulate. Freedom and justice are among those that I thought will be necessary to reflect on given the global challenges that we face today, as epitomized by the Middle East crisis and more aptly, the Palestinian question. In his last speech at the United Nations General Assembly on September 1998, Madiba had this to say, I quote, "For those who had to fight for their emancipation such as ours, who with your help had to free ourselves from the criminal apartheid system, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights served as the vindication of the justice of our cause. At the same time, it constituted a challenge to us that our freedom once achieved should be dedicated to the implementation of the perspectives contained in the Declaration. Today we celebrate the fact that this historic document has survived a turbulent 5 decades, which have seen some extraordinary developments in the evolution of human society. These include the collapse of the colonial system, the passing of a bipolar world, breathtaking advances in science and technology, and the entrenchment of the complex process of globalization. And yet, at the end of it all, the human beings who are the subject of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights continue to be afflicted by wars and violent conflicts. They have as yet not attained their freedom from fear of death that will be brought about by the use of weapons of mass destruction as well as conventional arms. As I sit in Gunu and grow as ancient as its hills, I will continue to entertain the hope that there has emerged a cadre of leaders in my own country and region, on my own continent and the world, which will not allow that any should be denied their freedom as we were, that any would be turned into refugees as we were, that any should be condemned to go hungry as we were, that any should be stripped of their human dignity as we were, close quote. Chairperson, I've quoted at length from Mandela's speech at the time as a reminder of how he thought about freedom and justice for all. It is also a reminder of the failures that we have still, albeit the advances in science and technology, that globally we have made, that we can see so many people being maimed as a result of our advanced technology in building arms. It is also a reminder at how we felt the human beings who are at the center of the Declaration of Human Rights remain victims of violent conflicts and wars, and how they would continue to go hungry without food in the midst of plenty in the world. Similarly, I quoted the speech because in it there lies a promise that Tata Madiba expressed. He was convinced he left behind a caliber of cadres in this country, in the continent, and in the world, who will not allow that any should be denied their freedom as we were, that any should be turned into refugees as we were, that any should be condemned to go hungry as we were. The past few days and weeks, we've witnessed in pain the consequences of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in Gaza. We've seen and watched helplessly as we saw women and children, fathers and sons, the aged and the infirm, running away to nowhere. Actually, as this morning the United General Secretary Ban Ki-moon said, that the people of Gaza, I quote, have nowhere to go. It is at these very moments that as this National Assembly, maybe we should be asking ourselves, what more can we do in support of the efforts of our government and our president to bring an end to that conflict? Is there something we can draw from our own experience that can serve as lessons to share with the people of Palestine and Israel, such that they can appreciate that their security is intertwined, that the lasting peace lies in dialogue and finding one another, and that it is freedom and justice for all that will guarantee peace, not war. As a country, we must remember we benefited from the solidarity of the peoples of the world during our own struggle for freedom and justice. As we watched helplessly, particularly this weekend, we were heartened too by a story of hope that emerged within Israel, as espoused by the spirit of the young men and women soldiers of Israel who refused to honor the call to go to war against Gaza. They decided to take a stand and say, no, they shall not go. Such initiatives must be supported and encouraged. For in their own words, they have said, the war will not bring lasting peace, but a negotiated settlement between the two peoples of Palestine and Israel will be the only solution. These young soldiers, Honorable Chairperson and members, reminded me of our own history of the End Conscription campaign, which was led by the then young white South Africans who were being conscripted to go to war in the 80s during our own struggle. They too made a similar call amongst their peers and refused to go to war against the liberation movement and the peoples of the frontline states, who then had borne the brutality of South African war, fought in their territories. These initiatives may have seemed small, even today they may seem small to others, but they do make an impact, if only to drive home a necessity to reflect deeper on the lasting solutions that must be found. In our own society, that initiative brought a new level of consciousness among those who might have wondered, why is there a need for a struggle for freedom? Today we remember the women of the Black Sash and the mothers of those who were to be conscripted, who stood firm with those who were oppressed and faced the then government to say no, not our boys to go to the war. May these efforts of the Israeli men and women help to open up some new avenues towards finding a lasting solution towards peace and self-determination. Honorable Chairperson, as we reflect on the situation in the Middle East, we're equally mindful of the situation in our continent of Africa, particularly the renewed tensions in Libya, the threatening famine in South Sudan, in Kenya, as well as the displaced people of the Central African Republic. We must, as this Parliament, continue to support the initiatives that the African Union has and continues to put in place in trying to do what it can to help mediate in these areas of conflict. Equally, we must support our own government, particularly in the deployment of our men and women in uniform in supporting the peace missions in our continent. As reflected in the speech by Madiba, when he said he's confident that as he retires to Kunu, he leaves indeed behind the men and women who will make sure that no one will be denied their freedom as we were. We can reflect our foreign policy as a country in the past 20 years. We can look back at the many initiatives that our government have led and continue to work for freedom and justice for all. The peoples of Madagascar, people of the Comoros, the people of Burundi, the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ireland, and many more will attest to these efforts of these men and women Madiba left behind, who ensured that no one will be denied their freedom as we were. Madiba's message also reflected on what the UN Declaration of Human Rights would mean for South Africa's post-independence. Through our Constituent Assembly, which was ably led by our Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, who has now excused himself, at the time of drafting our final constitution, ensured that many of those principles of the Declaration of Human Rights find their way in our constitution. Chairperson and honorable members, I must hasten to say, though, that the constitution of our country, in a way, reflects our own lived experience and reality. It was informed by the quest of so many who died before us. Many of those who adopted the historic document in 1943, the African Claims, which sought to articulate the African's point of view to the Atlantic Charter of 1941, and later the Freedom Charter in 1995. It was also influenced by many other initiatives that were taken by the People's Movement. The Harare Declaration is one of those, but also the work that was done by the women of our country, the Women's Charter in 1956, and later in 1994. Interestingly, the quest for freedom and justice for all in our country has been and continues to be about the struggle for gender equality. There's a lot of literature which illustrates how much within the liberation movement and in our society, women fought for political liberation and the freedoms that come with it, but equally, how they fought against patriarchy and envisioned an equal society. It is these struggles of women that ensured that the ANC as a liberation movement understood that no society can be free until its womenfolk is free. I must say that the struggle for women's emancipation even within the ANC was very interesting, particularly the debate in 1991, where at the end of that conference, our male comrades talked about the 30%. But it is that 30% debate and many other debates in our movement that ensured that in the desks of this parliament today, all parties now have got the representation of women even in this august house. I must say, Chairperson, that President Mandela, when he declared August 9 a national holiday, he said, I'll quote, "We have declared this day a national holiday. This is in celebration of the struggles of women over the decades and rejuvenation of our commitment to strive for a society free of all kinds of discrimination, more especially discrimination against women." But he didn't just talk, he acted. He was one of those people who was brave enough and appointed many women in his cabinet, unseen at the time. Remember, just before 1994, we only had Minister Rina Venter, Honorable Venter, and towards the late end, we had an addition, Honorable Camera. But when, in 1994, the change happened, Madiba was true to his own beliefs and convictions that justice indeed is for all. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Didiza Babu Shihonga.
Honorable Chair, honorable members of the House, you are honored. Mr. Mandela had the softer side of him. He had a sense of humor. The one sense of humor which I remember vividly was the color of the cat does not matter as long as the cat catches the mice. And he also, I think, would agree, the spirit of Mandela would agree with what I'm going to read, with what we are going to read. The paradox of our age. We have taller buildings but shorter tempers, wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. We spend more but have less. We buy more but enjoy less. We have bigger houses and smaller families, more convenience but less time. We have more degrees but less common sense, more knowledge but less wisdom. We have more experts and more problems, more medicine but less wellness. We build more computers to hold more information, to produce more copies, but we have less communication. We have multiplied our possessions but reduced our values. We talk too much, love too seldom, and lie too often. We have learned how to make a living, but not a life. We have added years to life, not life to years. We have been all the way to the moon and back, but have trouble crossing the street to meet the neighbor. We have conquered outer space, but not inner space. We have done larger things, but not better things. We have cleaned up the air, but polluted our souls. We have split the atom, but not our prejudices. We have learned to rush, but not to wait. We have more acquaintances, but fewer friends, not Mandela. Mandela had the whole world at his fingertips. We spend too recklessly, laugh too little, drive too fast, get angry too quickly, stay up too late, get up too tired, and read too seldom, watch television too often, and pray too seldom. Mandela's spirit lives, and we must emulate it. Thank you.
Siyabonga Ubaba Chihonga. Thank you, honorable members. We now call order, honorable members. We now call on Honorable G. McKay.
Thank you, Chairperson. The members of Okhang are always a tough act to follow. It is with a great sense of humility that I rise to add the voice of the Democratic Alliance to the collective voice of universal appreciation expressed by this House as we honor South Africa's greatest son, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Chairperson, let me start by acknowledging the Mandela family. We as a nation must never forget the significant contribution and immeasurable personal sacrifice made by the Mandela family in sharing Tata Madiba with us all. I salute the bravery of my dear childhood friend, the exceptional Zoleka Mandela, author of When Hope Whispers, in sharing with frankness and candor the personal price exacted on her family as a result of Madiba's pursuit of freedom and justice for all. Her family's sacrifice has been the nation's gain. Now and forever, the Mandela family will be revered in the hearts and minds of our people. How blessed we are as a nation, Deputy Speaker. For despite our manifold challenges, we are today a nation of undeniable hope and deep aspiration. It was Madiba who first taught us to hope and aspire for a better tomorrow. It was Madiba who first taught us that hope cannot inhabit the same space as hate. It was Madiba who made it possible for whites to let go of their belief of racial superiority and for blacks to discard their anxieties of inferiority, achieving the type of embodied realization first articulated by Steve Biko. It was Madiba who taught us that a true revolutionary leader does not think about the people or for the people, but only with the people. For you see, Madiba embodied what Brazilian philosopher and educator Paulo Freire identified as the true mark of a revolutionary leader, namely an unwavering trust in the people. Simply put, Chairperson, it was Tata who first saw a rainbow when all others only saw clouds. But to do justice to the memory of Madiba is also to remember the painful system of oppression against which he led the courageous fight. Let me repeat that point for the benefit of the Honourable Manamela, that he might correct his views on liberals. Honourable Manamela, to do justice to the memory of Madiba is also to remember the painful system of oppression against which he led the courageous fight. His fight was against 300 years of colonialism and apartheid, which had established as its main objective what Paulo Freire describes as an oppressive consciousness, in which every aspect of social and economic life was transformed into an object of domination. At the heart of this system lay a single and most powerful objective: to instill a negative, silenced, and suppressed self-image into the oppressed, in order that European settlers might attain ascendancy and domination over indigenous populations. In the apartheid South Africa in which we all grew up, Madiba was presented as the ringleader of the so-called Swart and Rooi Gevaars, revolutionary dangers that the National Party claimed could overwhelm and undermine the entirety of Western civilization. State-owned media became the mouthpiece of a notorious propaganda machine. It created a hobgoblin of not only Madiba, but of the African National Congress as well. Whites were taught that the ANC were harbingers of destruction. that the ANC would drive all whites from South Africa, would destroy white culture, and would rape and kill white women and children. For many whites, the existence of the ANC's military wing, Umkhonto Sizwe, provided proof of this very narrative. Under apartheid, footage of black rebellion was splashed across the media. This footage, however, never told the true story of black rebellion, nor the truth about the brutality and suffering visited upon black people. Rather, these images were carefully crafted, Goebbels-like, to depict black South Africans as subhuman and savage. In this way, the apartheid government sought to make it an implausibility that South Africa could ever unite as a single, prosperous, multicultural nation rooted in the African ideal of Ubuntu. It was this vision that Mandela began to craft into reality following his release in 1990. In the years following his release, Madiba showed tremendous leadership, calling on all South Africans to unite and stand together against those who, from any quarter, would try to destroy our future of freedom and democracy. At his inauguration in 1994, having achieved democracy and freedom for all, Madiba paused but a moment before issuing South Africans with their next task, that of building a society of which all humanity can be proud of. And that, Chairperson, is the great unfinished task of our time. I therefore ask, Chairperson, that all members of this House today honour Madiba's legacy by renewing our individual and collective commitment to finishing the job that he set for us, that of building a truly free and just society. I ask all members to commit themselves to reconciliation, redress, diversity, and delivery in order to build a country in which we are all equal partners and in which no one is left behind and in which we all have access to a full range of social and economic opportunities. I further ask, Chairperson, that as leaders we always choose unity over division and that we never sacrifice the unity of the nation to achieve short-term political advantage. Finally, I challenge all members of the House to honestly reflect and decide. Are you a leader in the mold of Nelson Mandela, or perhaps Walter Sisulu, or Chief Albert Luthuli, or Helen Suzman, or Oliver Tambo, or Steve Biko, or Beyers Naudé, or Brayton Breitenbach, or Bram Fischer, or Hector Peterson, or Neil Adjett, or any of our leaders whose selflessness, dedication, and humanity mark them out as true patriots of the nation, defenders of justice and freedom in South Africa. Now and forever, Chairperson, let us fight to make real... Now and forever, Chairperson, let us fight to make real Madiba's dream of a united nation with a single and glorious future. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable McKay. We now call on the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Honorable Mzimane.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair, Cabinet colleagues, honorable members, and thanks to Honorable McKay for recognizing at last that we all want to be like those who come from this side of the House. Allow me, House Chair, to say Nelson Mandela was first and foremost a revolutionary who fought for freedom and for a better life for all South Africans. Mandela was a strong proponent of thoroughgoing political and economic transformation. One of his main concerns was the future of the youth, and particularly that they could get an education and fulfill their potential. He believed that knowledge and skills, coupled with determination and courage, could help even the most disadvantaged and oppressed person to overcome their condition and reach their full potential. National reconciliation, for which Madiba is well known for, was, we must say, not meant to be a brake on tackling race, class, and gender inequalities in South African society, nor a trick to protect the privileges of a few and dumb down the legitimate expectations of the majority. No, the idea of national reconciliation was about massaging white and class guilt. But it was meant to create conditions for accelerating change and to radically transform the conditions of the majority of the workers and the poor in our country. Similarly, national reconciliation was not a lone effort by one individual, but a commitment by the African National Congress to heal and unite our country. The ANC and government's commitment to a second, more radical phase of our transition is a necessary step to take forward national reconciliation by seeking to confront the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Key in this second phase is the necessity to radically transform our economy to address the needs of the majority. This is what Nelson Mandela, his comrades, and our people as a whole stood for. Madiba himself said, and I quote, "Where globalization means, as it so often does, that the rich and powerful now have new means to further enrich and empower themselves, at the cost of the poorer and weaker, we have a responsibility to protest in the name of universal freedom," unquote. Together with his comrades in the ANC, Mandela's struggle was later guided and informed by that most important document of our times, the Freedom Charter. Amongst other things, the Freedom Charter said, especially on education and training, and I quote, "Education shall be free, compulsory, universal, and equal for all children. Higher education and technical training shall be open to all by means of state allowances and scholarships awarded on the basis of merit," unquote. Indeed, under the leadership of President Mandela, these allowances and scholarships took the form of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, at his time known as TEFSA, the Tertiary Education Fund for South Africa, which was only 70.5 million rands and benefiting only 25,568 students in 1994, but has now grown and reached 9 billion, covering more than 430,000 poor students in 2014. Since its inception, it has benefited more than 1.4 million poor students. It now not only covers universities, but has been extended to our technical and vocational education and training colleges, formerly known as FETs, TVET bursaries, TVET college bursaries have grown from 318 million in 2010, benefiting 61,703 students, to 2.1 billion rands in 2014, targeting 233,958 students. This is truly in the spirit of fulfilling what Comrade Madiba struggled for and his commitment to education, and is meant to grow and diversify an affordable quality post-school education and training to meet the needs of our economy and for individual empowerment. In line with Madiba's wishes, our own department has since 2010 been celebrating every 18th of July, Nelson Mandela Day, through a career guidance festival, which since then has now reached over 30,000 secondary school learners. Each year we have held this event in rural areas of our country, in Kiani, in Limpopo, Lusikisiki, in the Eastern Cape, Taung in the Northwest, Putati Chaba in the Free State, and this year in Sebokeng in the Vaal Triangle. These events inform the youth about various possible career choices and motivate them to strive to achieve the best they can. South Africa's youth today has more career choices than was the case prior to 1994. We believe that such initiatives to assist our young people are a true tribute to Madiba's commitment to education. However, House Chairperson and honorable members, today there are many attempts to appropriate Madiba opportunistically. The attempted appropriation of Madiba and his legacy, in fact, is tantamount to him being imprisoned for the second time. But this time not on Robben Island, but in something akin to a right-wing ideological prison. We must reject these attempts, and that is why it is important that history will be introduced as a compulsory school subject so that, amongst others, future generations can be told who Nelson Mandela really was. There is also a deliberate distortion, and we heard it today, that seeks to place Madiba outside, if not in opposition to what the ANC stands for. This is an old right-wing tactic, that of praising the dead in order to condemn the living. And in this case, praising Madiba in order to condemn the ANC and its leadership. You will not succeed in this. Some also try, as Honorable Manamela said, to use the name of Madiba to mislead our youth born since 1994, as if the ANC doesn't represent their aspirations, as if our youth is unaffected by the realities we inherited prior to 1994. Neither was Madiba a demagogue. Madiba himself once said, and I want to quote him, "A good leader can engage in a debate frankly and thoroughly, knowing that at the end, he and the other side must be closer and thus emerge stronger. You don't have that idea when you are arrogant, superficial, and uninformed." End of quotation. By the way, according to Wikipedia, there is a very wonderful definition of a demagogue. That a demagogue is defined as someone who says very little, but says it very loudly. We are, of course, proud of the fact that Madiba is now respected and celebrated globally, even by those who imprisoned him. You can hardly find them today. But Mandela was of the ANC, made by the ANC, but for the people as a whole. Mandela was part of an ANC that is a disciplined force of the left, not a hodgepodge of a range of ideological tendencies, including the worst backward form of black consciousness. By the way, we need to remind some members in this House, good Bigowis graduated into the Congress movement. As the ANC, because we are the disciplined part of the left.
Honorable Zemande, I recognize you.
The point of order is that the Honorable is a Minister of Higher Education. He should not be quoting Wikipedia as a source.
Honorable members, please, let's respect this debate.
When you want definitions of strange phenomena, you go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia will explain all the strange phenomena that we actually have. You don't go to good dictionaries if you want to explain this.
On the point of order,
we are an ANC.
You are recognized.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to check whether is it parliamentary for Honorable Minister to address us sitting down, or should he stand?
Honorable members, before you continue, please, let us respect the occasion. We cannot keep on doing that, please.
I'm proud of my height. I'm closer to the ground. An ANC that does not, we are an ANC that does not make promises, by the way, but we make commitments that we seek to achieve and realize. An ANC with a bias towards the working class and the poor. An ANC government that has built more than 3 million houses for the poor over the past 20 years. No other country has done this in the world over the last 20 years. Just but one. Unfortunately, what we are seeing in this house is another strange phenomenon, sometimes in the name of Mandela. A strange convergence, such that it may not be inappropriate to talk about the emergence of the Economic Freedom Front Plus in this house. We should not make the mistake of thinking of Madiba as a softie. To listen to some of the media coverage, you could be misled into thinking that Madiba was nothing but a nice old grandfather who loved children and forgave those who mistreated him. He was these things, but a revolutionary giant as well. The first commander-in-chief of Umkhonto weSizwe. As his successors in the ANC-led government, we will continue our struggle on all fronts, including, importantly, on the educational front and economic transformation, to ensure that our people have the knowledge and skills to achieve the ideals that we stand for. Now, Honorable my man, you talk about non-racialism. I can guarantee you one thing. You will never achieve a non-racial society with the DA's open opportunity society, because it's a notion that does not recognize the existence of historical inequalities. That is why, when it comes to affirmative action and black economic empowerment, the DA speaks from both sides of its mouth.
Chairperson.
Is that a point of order?
Yes, I'd like to know if the revolutionary in Zimande, Honourable Zimande, would take a question.
No, I think it's too late in the afternoon now. I want Honourable
Thank you,
Chair.
Honourable. Think down.
You know, one thing, by the way, that we tend to forget and we do not say, is that we grabbed the DA's predecessors kicking and screaming towards majority rule and one person, one vote. They had always stood for a qualified franchise because, as Professor Dr. Etimaluka in his latest book called The Friends of the Native explains it very well, that South African white liberalism would only allow a vote for black people who looked like them, who spoke like them, who acted like them. That is why they supported a qualified franchise. Honorable Ramakasa, we have actually gone a long way in implementing what is contained in the Freedom Charter. We will be educating you bit by bit as you get used to Parliament about what we have actually done. Honorable Mngwango is not here. I wanted to remind him that the debate is about Utatu Madiba. It was not about Usheng. I thought I was in a different meeting, honestly. Babu Mponchana. Besikhuluma ngoMadiba, besingakhulumi ngomntwana wakwaPhindangene. Sisayofika isikhathi sokuthi sikhulume ngomntwana wakwaPhindangene, simchaze ngendlela esimazi ngayo. Yilento ke eshiwo ilungu elihloniphekile uMngcwango elenza ukuthi sizibone ukuthi sasi correct nelungu elihloniphekile umama uThoko Didiza saye elithuli sayovimba uMadiba ukuthi angalinge aye kwirally nomntwana wakaPhindangene ndawonye. Saya lapha sihamba nezingqeqe zethu singashayiwe kuyisimanga. Ngoba sasibona ukuthi sifuna ukuthi umlando wethu siwusho ngendlela oyiyona, because that violence in KZN was not black on black violence. It was the violence of the apartheid regime against the liberation movement. That's what it was. Sathi kasay uMadiba ka eTaylor's Holt Wayindoda enenkani njalo uMadiba sesiye singakusho lokho. Wala sathi ngeke asihambi la eShell House. Uma uthi uzoyetailers hold nangempela kayanga ngiyaxolisa lunga elihloniphekile Ditiza sengikhipha imfihlo zethu. Honorable Redelengesi, you know, the DA keeps on repeating this thing, which is not true, that we are failing to create entrepreneurs. The Mail and Guardian, young South African, 200 of them, there are lots of them. There is an emerging black middle class under this ANC government because of the opportunities that we've actually created. In fact, you tend to equate this advancement with corruption, something that borders on racism, actually. That blacks are inherently corrupt, and you do not even recognize the advances that our people are making. Honorable member from the AIC, the less said about you, the better. Otherwise, we may be taken as doing something unparliamentary. I don't have time for unparliamentary matters. But it is also proper, as I conclude, in honoring this giant, to say, to wish one organization that he worked together with for decades, its 93rd anniversary, that it is celebrating tomorrow, the South African Communist Party. Amabovu. Amabovu angempela, hayi amabovu ayimkokotela. Siyabonga kakhulu sihlalo.
Siyabonga baba.
And that final submission on the Mandela Day debate in the National Assembly was by Minister Blade Nzimande. This brings our broadcast to a close. Goodbye.